Hello and welcome to a new Games That Weren't video where today we're going to be looking at two sequels that were never released of a fantastic sideways scrolling shoot 'em up called Lines of the Universe. And this is the review from Commodore Format magazine back in September 1994. So Lines of the Universe was this really cool sideways scrolling Armalite style game, so heavily inspired by Armalite as you can see from the screenshots. And this was released very late in 64's life at a time when the games market had practically dried up, so there was no games being commercially released in the shops anymore, and we were kind of reliant on getting games via mail order from these companies that had popped up, that were trying to sort of rejuvenate the scene. So Electric Boys was the company that released it in the UK, and what they discovered was there was this sort of untapped resource in places like Germany, Poland and Denmark and other European countries of all these games that had never been seen or heard of in the UK, because this was kind of pre-internet. We didn't know about any of these titles, and at a time when there was no games actually being sold at all or seen, this was a great sort of resurgence for the 64, a very brief resurgence. Unfortunately, it was a little bit late in the day, so most people by this point had gone on to other machines, and only a handful of copies of these games ever sold. So it was a shame, really, because this had this been maybe a year or so earlier, then the 64 may have gone on for a little bit longer. You never know. So yeah, Lines of the Universe was a very cool shoot 'em up. It was quite difficult to play, and I remember really enjoying it back in the day. And it got quite a decent score overall in Commodore format. So they unfortunately took marks off it for being a bit too difficult, which I thought was a bit harsh. But yeah, great little game. And unfortunately, because when companies such as Electric Boys didn't quite work out with their sales, a lot of people left, and eventually Commodore format dried up as well and disappeared in 1995. And it was at that point we had to kind of rely on fanzines to get any new information on games. And it was through one of these fanzines called Commodore Scene, or Computer Scene when it was first released, that we discovered that there was going to be a sequel release called Return of the Lions. And this was due to be released back in 1996 by a company called Cherry Software, quite a short-lived company, another one of these mail order companies, and they had quite a few promising-looking games that you can find in GTW. And Return of the Lions, they released a preview of the game on one of the cover discs, and it was essentially more of the same thing. So it was the same kind of using the same engine, just with different graphics and sounds and that kind of thing. But unfortunately, when Cherry Software disappeared, Return of the Lions disappeared with it. Probably because their earlier games just didn't sell well at all. So that was it, really. But when we sort of got on the internet and started putting GTW up for the first time, we started to put entries up of some of the games that we knew of, and Return of the Lions was one of those early ones that we added. We were when we were looking at other online archives, we were very shocked to discover this game called Born in Space, which was yet another title in the series of the Lines of the Universe games. But it completely threw us, and for a number of reasons. So Return of the Lions was dated 1996. Born in Space was from 1994. So first of all, it seemed very strange that there was these two sequels that never got finished. I'd understand if it's one sequel, then fair enough, but having two unfinished sequels just seems really bizarre. The other thing as well, which you'll see now, and when we compare it to Return of the Lions, is that Born in Space was far more advanced in terms of technical sort of features in the game, whereas Return of the Lions was more close to the original game. Born in Space sort of took things another step, and we're going to kind of show you that demo now. So the Born in Space demo is unfortunately only a rolling demo, so we're going to kind of run through this and just show you as much of this game as we can. It's only kind of a short clip, and I'll kind of talk through it as we go. So first of all, we have a bit of the title screen before it then kicks into the game. What I'll do is I'll keep quiet on the sort of cutscene and sort of see if you can guess what the music is and where it comes from. Okay, so like a dodgy DJ announcement at the end of a track song. So that was Scumball by Tim Follin, so which is quite a nice little cover. Anyway, so the key big standout feature, if you're not familiar with the original game, then I suggest sort of checking it out. It's a really fantastic game. The original game was just a standard sideways scrolling game with character-based graphics, but Born in Space has this wonderful sort of up and down movement as well as the sideways scrolling. But in addition to that, you've got these really fantastic bitmap graphics as well. You've got that heavily detailed moon graphic and these like wonderful purple background bits as well, and it was far more advanced compared to the original game. So there was I think a lot more sprites on the screen. There was also better weaponry as well. So this was just a very brief glimpse of the game, and it seems a lot more frantic compared to the original as well. So this is quite a shock really. So we weren't expecting to see this one at all, and it seemed very different to the other two games. But that date just didn't make any sense at all. So we assumed that this must have been maybe the third game in the series. That there must have been a mistake with the dates. Maybe Return of the Lions was an early prototype that got resurrected instead of Born in Space. There's a couple of theories that we had, which I'll explain in a minute. So this is a mid-level Guardian. Very common to what you see in Armalite. It actually looks very similar to one of the Armalite Guardians as well. Okay, so we don't actually get to enter the inner sphere. It should end about here. Okay, so that was the end of that rolling demo. So just as a side note, I was just thinking about this a couple of months back actually, and essentially I think most of the game engine must be in the demo, I assume anyway. So I was wondering if it's possible that there might be something tucked away in this preview that would allow you to re-enable the joystick controls to sort of take control of the game. I don't know if anyone ever fancies taking a look, then I'd be really interested to find out if that's something that might be possible. Even though it's quite brief, I just thought it might be quite cool. Yeah, this was quite a surprise to see, and we were quite impressed by it when we first saw it. One of the theories was that this was one of the ideas was that this maybe was going to be the third game in the series, but the date didn't make sense. So what we assumed is that maybe it was abandoned because of the bitmap scroller. Maybe because there was another game released back in the mid to late 80s called Touchlight, which had like a bitmap based scroller or VSP based scroller, and it used to crash on a lot of the C64s. So we assumed that might have been the case with Born in Space. That was one of the theories behind why it wasn't finished or released, and why Return of the Lions was so much more like the original game. Maybe because the developer decided to revert back, we don't know. But then a couple of months back, we had quite a big surprise when one of our contributors or readers got in touch and supplied us with this review, which came from 64 magazine back in 1994, and assumably seems to be showing the complete game being reviewed. So we kind of assumed it was a full, well, suggest was it a full game or not, because some magazines back in the day, they used to be guilty of sort of reviewing previews as a full game. So but the key thing that you can see here quite clearly is in the screenshots, you've got a lot more screens being shown compared to the actual rolling demos, so it's very likely they must have reviewed a full game. But just to be 100% sure, we got in touch with Hans Summer, the coder of the original game and all the other sequels, just to confirm was Born in Space actually complete, and he confirmed that it was, and it was actually sold very briefly. Unfortunately, Hans confirmed that only a handful ever sold, so literally only about 4 or 5 copies inexplicably sold of the game, which seems very bizarre for a game in Germany back in 1994, because the German market compared to the UK was still fairly vibrant. So I think, as far as I know, you could release a game in 1994 and still make a bit of a profit. So it seemed very strange. The other thing that was strange as well is that usually when a game's released, the crackers would be the first people to release the game. You'd get crackers buying up early copies of the game and then cracking it and releasing it to the world, and that didn't seem to happen because there's no full copy of this game out there at all. It's just very, very bizarre. Unfortunately, when we asked Hans, he no longer seems to have a copy of the game at all. He's kind of looked numerous times for us, so the reliance on finding this game is in the hands of those handful that actually bought it. But unfortunately, no one's sort of come forward, sort of offering that they have a copy or anything like that. So we're kind of waiting now to see if anything does turn up. But anyway, this confirmed that Born in Space was the second game in the series, which made it even more confusing for the Return of the Lions for a couple of reasons. So I'm just going to kick into that now. So this particular preview is completely playable, and what we find quite strange is that the reason when we asked Hans about Return of the Lions, he confirmed that this was never finished, and the reason for that he gave was that he felt that the market had completely dried up by that point, and so he decided to walk away from it. So what seems really odd is that if you've sold only 4 or 5 copies of Born in Space, then to me that's pretty bad, and I probably would have quit at that point as well. But Hans decided to carry on, so maybe perhaps Cherry Software convinced Hans that there was still a market and they had a good distribution. So Hans decided to do Return of the Lions. We're not entirely sure why it kind of went back to the original engine. So one of the theories is that perhaps it was quicker for him to do a quick to make the game sort of turn around the game a lot quicker, is to just reuse the original engine compared to doing a whole bitmap based game. So Born in Space might have taken a lot more effort to produce overall. So that could be one of the reasons. The other thing which seemed very odd was that what he could have done was perhaps just taken Born in Space and given that to Cherry Software, tidy that up and release that. So we don't entirely know why that was. So maybe Born in Space did crash on some machines, as we sort of originally suggested, so we just don't know. Hopefully Hans will sort of shed some light on some of the reasoning behind the decisions made. Anyway, we're going to kick into Return of the Lions now, so I'm going to try and play through as much as I possibly can, but I doubt I'm going to get too far because I suck at playing games and talking, and I especially suck at using keyboard controls in an emulator for a shoot 'em up. So I need to get a proper decent joystick adapter at some point. Right. So yeah, if I go silent from time to time, it's just because I'm trying to concentrate for your benefit. Plus I'm sure you want me to shut up as well at some stage. Okay, I think I'm going to start this one again because that was absolutely awful. It's quite a large mid-level Guardian there. So I'm going to try and get this bonus pick up, hopefully. So yeah, very similar to the first game, just mostly different background graphics, and that was it. But I would have been quite happy to have seen this finished and had more of the same. To be honest, it was a shame it never got finished. Okay, there we go. Apologies for that. There was a little bit more further on, but I mean, you can download the preview for yourself off of the GTW website, and also the roll-in demo from Born in Space as well. I'll put the links in the description. So that was both Born in Space and Return of the Lions, so 2 fantastic looking sequels that sadly were never to be. But in the case of Born in Space, there's a full game out there to be discovered, so that's something we're still looking for. We hope to find in the future and then make it available for people to play, because it'd be such a shame if people didn't get to enjoy that game, especially knowing that it was actually complete. Yeah, we hope you enjoyed this new video. We'll try and get some more done soon, and hopefully I've not bored you too much. Please leave any comments below on the video if you have any to make, and we'll see you next time.